Yeah, yeah. Because of our international audience, it's always good to get a picture as to where you were born and raised.
Okay, so yeah, I'm born right in Sacramento, California, uh,
Okay.
and in the U.S. Right here in the heart of Sacramento, in a little community called Oak Park, California, and I grew up as a kid playing, with a traditional gospel background. My gospel background was more or less quartet background, not so much of the choir from a choir standpoint, but I grew up more or less listening to quartet music and grew up in that world. Even though I went to church and my uncle had a little choir, Baptist church, 6, 7 choir members. I was highly, strongly connected to the quartet genre of music. You
What is
know,
that? What is the
groups
quote?
like, so when a lot of people hear quartet, they think it's like some kind of barbershop thing. But
Yeah.
quartet was a genre of music, man, that hails from the Dixie Hummingbirds, the Five Blind Boys of Alabama and Mississippi. The Mighty Clouds of Joy, Dixie Hummingbirds, the gospel keynotes, the Pilgrim Jubilee. So more like a quartet group with like maybe 3 background singers and a lead singer and a full blown band with more likely 2 guitar players, a drummer, a bass player. And when it started like probably started back with just a guitar player and hand clapping and foot stomping back in the day. And that's kind of like how I was raised. Those are my roots, the quartet gospel roots. And I
Uh,
was raised on that. And then I was raised on, Thomas A. Dorsey, who created a lot of old Negro spiritual hymnals
wow.
that still live to this day. So those music like that is kind of the music that I pretty much grew up on. Yeah. So the quartet music, Helms, in quartet music, man, it's a mixture of gospel music, it's a mixture of blues,
Mm.
it's a mixture of country, kind of same chord progressions, um, 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 just real raw, natural raw. It wouldn't, they did a whole lot of hollering and screaming. In fact, the big choirs back in the day, they were not attracted to quartet singers because the choir singers we had more finesse, had more melody, harmony, more runs, and quartet singers were just the screamers and the squallers, and so the choirs would complain that the quartet guys was coming in hollering and screaming too much. But dad just loved that as a kid, man.
Wow.
So
That
yeah, so
sounds
that
like a 90s R&B.
oh man, it's really cool. And to this day, that root still lives in me. Because that's where the root I grew up in. Being from Northern California, and Northern California has serious quartet roots. So, for example, you take a group, and I know we're jumping the gun, but you take a group like Toni, Toni, Toni.
Mm.
Toni was a mega R&B group, right? But it was really a bona fide quartet group. It's just their style of music when they
Oh.
first came out with a song called Hey Little Walter.
Yeah, yeah,
Well,
yeah.
go back and do the roots and do the work. That's the song called Wade in the
Yeah,
Water,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
right? Hey Little Water. They basically took a old spiritual,
Mm.
flipped it, and just became phenomenal. So because we all kind of grew up together with Sadiq and Chubu and Carl Wheeler and Elijah Baker and Eric Pickfunk Smith. And they lived in Oakland, we lived in Sacramento, and our quartet group would go back and forth and we would
Oh.
sing. I was in the 3rd grade playing bass in a quartet group with men that were in their 30s and in their 40s, and they became my forefathers and mentors back at that.
Wow.
And that's basically how I was raised. I was raised up into that, and that
Oh,
music still lives in me to this day.
just to give us some context, because not all of us understand American education system. So third grade, you'd be how would that be? What, six or
I
five
was I
or
was I was 8 years old. I was
eight?
8 and a half. Yes, I was 8 and a half. Now
Wow.
I'm not sure because I so here, in America, the parents, if they felt like you wasn't achieving, they would sit your ass back a grade. So I got held back. so So I may not be a good person to ask, but I was in the 3rd grade, and my mama did held me back in either the 2nd grade or 1 grade. Oh, but it's like around in that era. So I was
Okay.
half man playing a big old Fender Jazz bass guitar, playing everything by ear, no formal training in music, even to this day.
So you didn't get lessons from your dad or from?
Well, my dad was very musical, but as far as lessons is concerned, no, everything was pretty much picked up. Had a guitar. My dad brought me my first guitar, and my dad was a garbage man, so he packed garbage. And back in that day, he really packed garbage. Now they have trucks that do the work.
Yeah,
Garbage men can't get out the trucks. They just have the machine pick
yeah.
up the thing. Back in that era, in that time, the garbage men used to walk from street to street and side to side, packing a big old barrel on their shoulder, literally
Wow.
taking the people's trash cans, packing it, then packing it on the shoulder. That was manual labor. That was real work. So
Wow.
my dad was a garbage man back in that day, and he went to every week they would do a trip to the junkyard or whatever, where they take all the trash. And
Mm.
he found in the junkyard, he found an acoustic guitar and only had 5 strings on it. And he brought that guitar home to me because I was complaining to him. I would go to church every Sunday with my mother, and I would see my Uncle John playing a guitar, a Tesco guitar, and I would always want a guitar like that. So my dad brought me a raggedy ass acoustic guitar from the junk pile, and he expected me to play that guitar. And I was, yeah, so I had a little attitude with my dad. I said, man, this doesn't look like, you know,
Uncle Joe's.
that doesn't look like my Uncle John's guitar. He said, hey, if you're gonna be good, you got to make it kick. So make it kick like that. So that was his thing. And so that was my very first guitar that he brought home from his junk route. And that's how I started playing guitar. And he would pick up the guitar, and he was a singer. He was a great singer. He was a quartet singer that sung with some groups, but for the most part, he kind of avoided singing in groups. But because he kind of stayed away from the church. My mother was the one who made sure we had the church background and kept us in the church. But my dad would play around in his guitar, and I just kind of got intrigued by that, and I just watch him play a few chords, and that's when I started to pick up the guitar. But I found that the guitar was a little bit difficult for me. And then I went to church one day, so my uncle's church, and a deacon showed up with a bass guitar that only had 4 strings on it. So I said, wow, now I think I could play that thing right there because it only had 4 strings on it. And now I'm begging my parents to get me one of those. And finally they did. They bought me something from the pawn shop, and it was a bass with 4 strings. And I fell in love with bass guitar, eventually going back to guitar. So I started off on guitar, didn't really do so well, went to bass guitar, kind of like made that my home, eventually coming back to guitar. So that was how it started.
And so during this journey, so when you get to say your high school,
Yes.
what was it just continuing to play around? But what was the idea? Did you have a sort of career progression, like
Sure.
going to work in the
Yeah.
city or something?
Yeah. So high school, so I never was one growing up. I was never that musician that played in a lot of top 40 bands,
Mm.
as a teenager or coming out of, getting ready going in from junior high to high school. I never was that guy. I always was still into playing with my quartet groups. Quartet music for me was my life. So but when I got into high school, I think it was the 10th, 11th grade, um, I I wanted to play in the jazz band, in the jazz ensemble. And the good thing about it was, now at this time, I'm a pretty decent bass player. I'm not like some of these, 16, 17-year-old kids you're seeing on YouTube now that are just crazy. These guys now are just bananas, man. They were just bananas. But I was decent, and what I had was my ear. My ear was super strong, and I knew I wanted to play in the jazz band. So in 11th grade, I spoke to the jazz teacher, and the good thing, he was a bass player. The instructor
Mm.
was a bass player. So I asked him if even though I didn't know how to read music, would he allow me to be in the jazz band? And his initial answer was no. And then I remember going to class, just sitting in on his class, and I told him, I said, I could play all this music that you guys are doing. They were doing, you know, like charts like Spain, Watermelon Man. I mean, just the traditional peg, you know, just that kind of stuff, you know, Steely Dan music. And I said, I could play this stuff. So one day after class, he sit me down. He says, man, let me hear you play. So I start playing. And he was really blown away. He said, oh my gosh. He says, it says, dude, it's a damn shame because I'm hearing you play all this amazing stuff and you don't even know what the hell you're doing. He said, but the sad part about it is this. He said, you sitting down here playing all this amazing stuff that you don't know what you're doing. He says, now I could sit down and write everything out you're playing. I could write it out. Once I write it out, I could play it. If I was able to write it out, I could play everything you're playing, and I'm pretty sure I can write it out. He said, but the sad part is this. Once they take that chart away from me, I'm lost as a dog. He says, but with you, they can put that chart in front of your face. You can still play it, and then when they remove it, you could still play it. He said, dude, you're an amazing player. I would strongly advise you to take the next step and learn reading. He says, but I want you into my band. You don't have to be required. You don't have to be required to know how to read my band. So what I would do for you is every day I would give you the recordings of the songs we would be doing for the next day. So he would advance me cassette tapes, go home, listen and learn to be ready for that morning for band class. And that's what I did. So in band class, I'm sitting up ready. I'm going through it. Everybody else is trying to figure it out and write it, you know, but me, I practice all night. So I'm ready to play. I got everything down, you know, whatever it was. So that's how I was able to play in jazz ensemble and the jazz band. And we were a pretty good band. I was proud of that moment.
But he said something about the sad thing is that you don't know what you're playing. Now, did he mean that you're playing without understanding connecting the emotions to it? Because I'm just trying to put this as a...
the sad part didn't have nothing to do with me. It had to do with him.
Okay.
That part was because he's a phenomenal bass player. He can only play by reading.
Oh, he was talking about himself. Okay. I thought he was...
Okay. He can only play by reading a chart. Me, I didn't need no chart in order to play what I was playing. Because you can put the chart in front of me, I'm playing it. You can take it away, I'm still playing it. See, a lot of readers, once you take that music away from them, they're lost because they can't rely on their ear, and the only way they can relate to that music is reading it, right? So people who play by ear, they rely totally on the strength of their ears and what they hear. Now, I'm not saying, for me it worked. Do I have any regrets about it? Of course I do, because now as I get ready to hit my 60s, I want to conduct, I want to do orchestra. There's a lot of things that I want to do that I got to go back and learn now because it's going to require the theory that I never got. So I put that on hold for the most part for all my life because I didn't need it, because most jobs I went on just let me hear it and I'm going to play it exactly like you guys recorded it. On everything I've ever done, I relied solely on my ears. But now, as in my older years, I want to get into a whole nother part of music because I'm in the scoring now. I'm in the arranging. I know how to do it. I just don't know what it is. I can't tell you what it is. And that's the part that I got to get.
Hey guys, thanks for watching. Thanks for being part of the Halftime Chat community. Please remember to like, share, and subscribe. But most importantly, why don't you consider being a member? That's a way of supporting the channel, but also getting a lot of videos ahead of time, a lot of behind the scenes stuff, and some exclusive content that doesn't get shared. But anyway, thanks for watching, and thanks for being part of Halftime Chat.